Hello and welcome back to Tiny Artist TV. We are skipping the pleasantries and jumping right into the drawing because I have 5 prompts to catch up on for today's video. So today's prompts, as you saw at the very beginning, are going to be bad, catacomb, sag, evict, and wag. Now, of course, I do have my opinions on how creative and how challenging some of these are, but we're gonna go ahead and continue on with as I'm sketching out for bad. Yeah, this is one that I feel a way about it. That's all I'm gonna say. Trying to make simple prompts interesting has definitely been one of the more challenging aspects of this year's AuGhost. The other challenging aspect being me realizing all over again for the 100th time why I don't typically do daily drawing challenges on this channel, because doing it this way is wholly unsustainable. In as much as that trying to keep up with the prompts and produce and post on time in lieu of everything else I have going on, I've learned my lesson. I throw my hands up, I'm waving my white flag. The next time I say I'm gonna do a 30-day challenge or a daily drawing challenge, whatever, I need someone to pull me to the side and say, hey, don't. Or, this is a way I've sort of potentially will get around this issue, is maybe doing daily live streams. But I also know that that is unrealistic considering what my schedule is like outside of YouTube. So, unfortunately, this might actually be the last year that I do AuGhost on YouTube. The next time I do it, it's probably just going to be in my sketchbook, posting on Instagram. And the reason I'm not even deigning to talk about the prompt or the drawing for this first portion of the video is because, come on, let's be honest. Bad. Now, I will say, the original whole thing AuGhost started, the ghost that you see on the AuGhost template, that is the ghost that people are supposed to be drawing. His name is AuGhostus, and these prompts you're supposed to draw him in relation to these, but I caught onto that train late. So the way I've been doing it is the way I'm going to continue to do it, which is trying to make these very simple things more interesting. So here is bad, the first prompt for today's video. Like I said, we have 4 more to get through, 5 altogether. So starting out on catacomb. Now, I'm sure it's kind of obvious that there's gonna be some ghostly things happening in catacombs. So how do I make catacomb interesting? Well, viewer, on the other side of the conversation, I'm glad you asked. Because I kind of didn't. I basically just drew the catacomb, and then I, ironically, despite my rant at the beginning of the video, end up doing Augustus in the picture. And initially I wanted to do something that was sort of inspired by As Above, So Below, which the horror in that movie, it's more of a psychological nature. It's not really, there are some supernatural elements, but it didn't really work out the way I wanted it to. So I drew the catacomb, and then I sat there with it like, oh yeah, this is a nice looking asset I'm never going to use because my webcomic takes place in a completely different environment. And so I was like, oh, well, what kind of ghost am I going to draw in here that's not just like super obvious? And so I just threw Augustus in there and called it a day. But the back end of this video, this is where I really started to have fun. Because for the next prompt, which is sag, when I saw this, I immediately thought of the sort of melty haunted deer that I did for, I believe it was the color palette challenge back in 2023. Of course, I'm going to put it up on screen so you can see that. I thought of doing a creature or a spirit in that same wheelhouse. Like, they're the same thing has happened to them. Well, sort of. Design-wise, the same thing has happened to them. But the idea behind this particular entity, what happened in this person's life, this is essentially my take on what a, like, depression ghost would look like. You're just kind of goopy and saggy and falling apart, which is what depression feels like. You're just kind of goopy and sagging and falling apart, and you just kind of, like, some days you just want to rip your skin off, and some days you just want to lie there and nothing helps. And yeah, so this is a depression ghost for the prompt sag, and I don't show the line art process because you're pretty much seeing the line art process here in the sketch. It's just me taking the blue lines and making them black. So this is sag. Enjoy! Next up, we have my interpretation of an oldie but goodie classic meme for the prompt evict. So when I saw evict, I eventually got to thinking of an exorcism, because with an exorcism you're basically evicting a spirit from whatever domain it's haunting. And so this led me to thinking of, like, how can I make this sort of fun? Because, like, it's very, like, I didn't want to be cliche with it, was the thing. So my spin on it was to paste it onto the meme of, I think it's Desperate Housewives, or it's some reality show. A woman screaming, there's one woman crying, there's one woman screaming, and she's pointing, and then on the other side is a cat sitting at a table in front of a plate of salad. So I basically just pasted the idea of an exorcism onto that meme. And so we have the angry screaming priest, and then this sort of very intentional Shelley Duvall. Also, she's a mix between Shelley Duvall from The Shining, rest in peace, and then also the character from Mouthwashing. I can't remember her name, I'll put it up on screen, but a mix between those two characters, demeanor wise, expression wise, because as you can see with, like, everyone's expressions are sort of more cartoony, a little more exaggerated. And then of course you have the demon guy, who's sort of like, I've kind of like kawaii-ified him and gave the horns are a headband, because he's not actually a demon, he's a ghost. And so I was like, okay, well, how can I make him look more like a cat? And so I was like, okay, well, horns, but he's a ghost, he's not a demon, so the horns are a headband, so he looks more like a cat. It's very obvious what meme this is imitating, but I had fun putting this image together, so I figured this was a nice little palette cleanser between the two boring prompts at the beginning of the video, the creepy one kind of in the middle, and then we have this one, and then we're finishing off with another one that is genuinely creepy in my opinion, or at least I tried to make it creepy. I tried to make this like a horror movie poster, like a very like late 90s, early 2000s classic Japanese style horror movie poster. Incidentally, it kind of ends up looking more like a classic horror manga cover than a movie poster, but the idea is still there. And I'm specifically thinking of one of my favorite horror manga, Goth by Otsuichi, just the way the initial form of the character flows into just like the black nothingness of her hair. But this is for the prompt wag, and so again, you would initially probably think of like a dog when you think of wag, and I thought of this character as wagging her finger in a sort of not disapproving, it's disapproving in a cheeky way, kind of like a oh you shouldn't have done that kind of way. And so I had actually in the final version of this was playing around with a few different versions, one of which had the sort of tagline of I'm the girl your mother warned you about or whatever, and I was like, oh, that's stupid, that's cheesy, but that's kind of the vibe of it. is that this is a telephone ghost, and that sounds stupid, but when I tell you that Japan has a yokai for everything, and I mean everything, they have toilet yokai, they have drowning yokai, they have umbrella yokai, they have spite yokai. Why couldn't there be a telephone yokai? So there probably is. I haven't looked into it, but there probably is some sort of electric wire yokai. Yeah, a denki yokai, but this is again, 90s horror version of this ghost of this girl who I guess got the bad end of a blind date and now haunts men who try to lure women into these suspicious dates and gets vengeance on them, because what else are you gonna do? You're a ghost and you've got all this free time, and of course, as I've mentioned, the energy that you carried in life goes over with you if you become a ghost and you're bound here, blah 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 blah. So her whole deal is taking out, you know, men who are less than stellar. So she and the Jorogumo probably get it wrong. Wrong. Ha. So she and the Jorogumo probably get along pretty well, despite the fact that the Jorogumo is a very traditional ghost, and she is obviously a very more modern ghost, but they probably find time to link up on the weekends and discuss their men annihilating plans. Or more so, monsters that look like men who prey upon unsuspecting young women. But anyway, that is the last prompt for today's video, and that brings us to the end of video number 6 in the AuGhost series. I know this one was a little bit longer, not much longer than the other ones, but either way, I hope you stuck around and got inspired by the prompts. And if you're working on AuGhost, I would love you to tag me down in the comments or tag me on Instagram so I can see what you're working on. But until then, thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a weird day.